There we go. Welcome back for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I believe this is episode 24 of the Silver and Blue Podcast. Week 3, we are previewing the Cowboys-Giants Monday night matchup. I'm joined by my co-host, Corey Douglas. How are we doing today, Corey?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to Monday night.
Yeah, it's been a pretty eventful week. I mean, obviously they came away with the big win on Sunday against the Bengals. But before we jump into the Cowboys-Giants game, we do have some other stuff to get into. Let's start with the Dac timeline because I'm still not entirely sure when he's going to come back. Jerry keeps hinting that he could be back next week against Washington. I would be stunned if he plays next week against Washington. And frankly, I would be pretty surprised if he played in week 5 at Los Angeles against the Rams. I think the most realistic return date for Dak is probably week 6 against Philly. But even then, that seems just a little soon. And just running Dak out there, I mean, he's your franchise. So, I mean, running him out there when he's not fully ready and he's at risk of a serious injury or a re-injury, that just seems like malpractice. So, when do you think Dak's going to be back? Because I would be stunned if it's next week. I could maybe see squint and see him playing against the Rams. But based off what's coming out of the Star right now, when do you think Dak will play? And I believe he was practicing lightly today, throwing the training ball.
Yeah, I did see the video or pictures of that today. My guess or my best guesstimate would probably be the football game against the Eagles, Week 6. I think that's the most realistic timeline. I mean, I think it lines up more so with what we were hearing when the injury first occurred and he went through the surgery that he had. So my guesstimate would be the Philadelphia Eagles game.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. These are the type of injuries that could be re-injured, and it just wouldn't make sense. I don't think especially against Washington. I mean, if he's back against Washington? I mean, that would be. I mean, this was initially a 6 to 8 week injury we were talking, and Washington is 3 weeks removed from the injury. So I'd be stunned if he played against Washington. But yeah, the Eagles seems the most realistic. But I mean, the way they're talking, I mean, it sounds like there's at least a chance he could be back against the Rams. And again, I hope they don't rush him. I hope, because it seems like Cooper Rush can kind of at least steer the bus while Dak's out. So, and on top of all that, you've got your owner trying to create a little quarterback controversy with with his comments today. And I get what he was saying, and people were overreacting to that. Jerry's saying, I hope Cooper Rush plays so freaking well that it means we have a quarterback controversy. I that's what he meant. But my thing is, just shut up. You don't have to say this to the media. All you're doing is just creating a stir. There's no reason for Jerry Jones to be saying that. And it's just I get what he was saying, but it was just so unnecessary of him to say, because it's just people are going to take that and run with it, and it'll be on First Take tomorrow morning trying to create a quarterback controversy.
Yeah, I think in terms of that whole conversation, I think like we were kind of touching on just a second ago, I think best case scenario is Cooper Rush goes out, wins Monday night against the Giants, wins next Sunday against Washington, and then it kind of buys you a little bit of time for that Rams game where maybe you throw Cooper Rush out there, even though Dak may be, maybe 95% or something like that. And then as far as his comments today, I just laugh at Jerry because I mean he's so good at this. He knows how to drum up a headline, and he will do so. And just at any given time, I mean, anything he says is going to generate that conversation. And if the Cowboys aren't in the headlines, he's going to make sure the Cowboys get back in the headlines with something he says. And that's the kind of just the way I look at this. And just Jerry being Jerry. I mean, it's it just is what it is. I mean, no other general managers, owners are out there talking this much and talking this recklessly in a lot of people's eyes, but it's Jerry being Jerry, and that's why this. What was the latest Cowboys worth? It was like what 8 billion or 9 billion, whatever the number was. This is these are the reasons why.
It's Jerry being Jerry, just like you said. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with Dak right now. I'm not sure. I'm not sure 'cause it's very vague. It's very very vague. So we're with Cooper Rush for now. And then one more thing before we get into the Giants game. Jason Peters began practicing, and I was curious your thoughts on what you think the best plan is, because it seems like they're talking about making Jason Peters a swing tackle where he could potentially play some right tackle too. They've been working him some at guard, because I guess that seems like they want to keep Tyler Smith at left tackle. Um, what do you think their best five is? Because I know what mine is, and I kind of disagree with how they're handling this Jason Peters thing. What are your thoughts on how they're handling the Jason Peters return?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like in the back of my mind, I feel like they're kind of buying time to kind of see how well or not well that Tyler Smith does. So I think the first glimmer of any sign of weakness that Tyler Smith shows, I think they were planning to put him at Peters at left tackle, slide Tyler Smith at left guard, where he played the majority of the offseason. But now we're through 2 games, and it hasn't been perfect from Tyler Smith, but I think he's done well enough to where you don't want to, disturb that if he's gaining some confidence at that position. So my I think eventual outcome that the Cowboys will come to is that I think they leave Tyler Smith at left guard, and then I think it's a toss up between right tackle and left guard on where Jason Peters plays. And I think that's kind of what the Cowboys are kind of maneuvering as they work him into game shape. But the best five, I definitely would be, I think you can interchange. If Tyler Smith starts to struggle at left tackle, just slide him into guard, put Jason Peters at left tackle. But I think it works vice versa as well. If Tyler Smith continues to show signs and it shows and continues to improve at left tackle, just slide Jason Peters in at guard. And I don't think you miss a beat at that position. And then I think what happens with Connor McGovern once that happens is I think he's your quote unquote swing guard. And, he's there just in case of injuries or just in case anything happens. And then, who knows? Terrence Steele, he could not play well. And then, you start kind of playing musical chairs that way as well. So I think there's a bunch of different options to get the best five on the field. And I just think the Cowboys are kind of sorting through some of that right now.
Yeah, there's definitely some options, but I think the best five is clearly Peters at left tackle, Smith at guard, Biotish at center, Martin at right guard, Steele at right tackle. All this messing around, like Jason Peters. I'm not saying he still is a Hall of Fame type player, or at least at that level, but Jason Peters is his best position is left tackle. And your initial plan was Tyron Smith at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, and now you have Jason Peters here. Your best five is unquestionably, I think Smith at guard, Peters left tackle, and I think that five that I just rattled off would actually that's a pretty good offensive line. I mean, the way Terrence Steele's been playing, he's been pretty good aside from the penalties in week one. Zach Martin, Tyler Biotish has been really solid. And based off of last year's tape, Jason Peters still has some gas left in the tank. So I personally think I would move Tyler Smith to left guard, just because it's not for lack of playing well, because I think Tyler Smith he's played pretty well. But I saw someone on Twitter put it well. They said if you're putting Jason Peters at left tackle, then you're playing for now. If you're putting Tyler Smith at left tackle, that means you're playing for the future. And I think putting Tyler Smith at guard, it straddles both. You're able to play now because I think that's a better combination now. Because also, with McGovern now, I mean, Tyler Smith at left guard is miles better than Matt Farniok at left guard. And so I think that would make left tackle and left guard better. And you're still getting great experience for Tyler Smith because on top of all that, he's playing next to one of the best tackles of the last decade for him to listen to. So it seems
I would
like
argue that the Cowboys are playing for the future anyhow, though.
Say that again?
I said I would argue that the Cowboys have been playing for the future with the whole way they've handled the offseason, getting rid of, some seemingly talented players.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think they are. I agree. I just think if you're trying to win now, the best way to go forward is Peters at left tackle and Smith at left guard, especially with the Connor McGovern injury, because Farniok is he's struggling out there. And, it's nothing against him. It's just like that's what happens when you have a third string guard going out there. So I don't know when Peters will be ready. It could maybe be this week, but it sounds like it might be another week, maybe two. But yeah, I just want to have that conversation before we get into the Giants because it's something that's going to start to be talked about more as Peters gets closer and closer to being ready. So, but let's dive into this Giants game. First of all, it can't be understated how important this game is from multiple angles. From a trying to catch up with the Eagles standpoint. Or trying to keep pace with them. I know you're a game back in them right now, but it's week 3. So, but just if you're able to go in there and get a win against New York on the road, Monday Night Football, lights are bright. That would do so much for this team's confidence, even more so, I think, than the Bengals game because, I mean, this game means a lot, especially with the Giants starting 2-0. Giants fans are starting to get a little lippy. It's their first time being over 500, and I think since 2016. So they're a little cocky, but they have a chance to make a pretty decent statement here. And we said, with Dak out, their best chance to stay in the hunt is, can Cooper Rush win you 2, maybe 3 games? Well, this would put you at 2 right away, and you would have a chance at home against Washington the following. Not getting ahead of ourselves, but if you're able to win, you have a chance to get to 3-1 with Washington coming to town, and it's obviously a super winnable game. So, if they're able to win this game, you're starting to think through some options. Like Dak's coming back around the corner. You're catching up with Philly. You have another winnable game next week. This would be huge if they're able to steal another win with Cooper Rush.
Yeah, I think the biggest point there that you touched on is the Giants are 2-0 themselves. So if you go in there and lose this game and, they become 3-0, you're 1-2, you're 0-1 against them. You start talking about tiebreakers down the road and, who knows if the Giants' success is sustainable. I personally wouldn't sit here today and tell you that I think it is. But, if they beat the Cowboys on Monday Night Football, you talk about a team with some confidence that's going to start heating up over there in New York. You talk about the fans being cocky. The players are going to start getting some of that confidence as well. So I think this is a very important game. Obviously, it's the first division game. It's your first road game of the season. So you want to get off to a good, showing on there and kind of say, okay, Giants, we still, we won the NFC East last year. We don't have our quarterback, but we're still here. And you kind of have to make that statement here in the early season game. And it's on national TV. I know the players always talk about, national TV games. Plus, it's Monday night. So, I mean, those are the ones where the stars are supposed to come out. And, this is a game that the Cowboys need to win, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one for sure, just because, like you were saying, the Giants are 2-0. That it's going to be rowdy. They always get up for when the Cowboys are in town. So, if they're able to win Sunday, win Monday. If they're able to win Monday, I think that immensely changes the outlook for the rest of the season, just from a standpoint of stealing the first 2 games out Dak. So, yeah, I think we both said it. It's an important game. We'll get into the Giants offense against the Dallas defense. And I personally am pretty excited for this just because I think this is where Dallas is going to be able to win on Monday. The Giants offensive line, Andrew Thomas aside, has been rough to say the least in the first 2 weeks. They've struggled a lot with I believe the Panthers defensive front in week 2 and then the Titans defensive front in week 1. I believe they gave up 15 pressures to the Panthers on Sunday. It's not a very good offensive line. It's improved. They have Evan Neal at right tackle, Andrew Thomas left tackle. Andrew Thomas has been terrific so far, but Evan Neal, I think, is going to be a really good player. But right now, he's going through some growing pains, and I think, the Giants' interior has been really rough. I think Dallas's defensive front has a chance to really take over this game, and I'm excited for their prospects in that area. So let's start there. Let's start in the trenches on the Giants O versus the Dallas D. What are your thoughts on what the Dallas D could do?
Yeah, my initial thoughts looking at this offense is like, where is the talent? I mean, you have Saquon Barkley as far as skill position players. You still have Saquon Barkley. He's coming back off an injury. He had a really good week 1, kind of a quiet week 2. Sterling Shepard, I mean, for the casual football fan or a Cowboys fan, this is probably the only guy that you're going to recognize on this offense aside from Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. But when you look at the offensive line, I look for an opportunity where I think we'll see Micah Parsons coming straight up the middle, kind of taking advantage of Mark Gronkowski, John Feliciano, and Ben Bredesen. So I think that's where the Cowboys defense can take advantage of the Giants offense. And I look for Micah Parsons. He's had 2 sacks in each of the first 2 games. I think this is another opportunity where he might get 2 more this week. And we're going to start just talking just ridiculous, standards. And we're going to throw Micah Parsons in the MVP conversation, after this game, I feel like, just because there is an advantage there for him to take advantage of. And, I think that's where, once again, the Cowboys defense, I think, will lead the charge in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. The Giants just they don't have many weapons outside of Saquon Barkley, who we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, the Giants' interior is not very good, and that's putting it a little bit nicely. And Evan Neal struggled at right tackle. This feels like another Micah Parsons game, just because this is the beauty of having a unique guy like Micah Parsons, is where he's not just an edge. You can deploy him all over, and I think they're gonna mug the A gaps a little bit with Parsons, LVE, Anthony Barr, and I think they're gonna be able to move Parsons around to get matchups that they really like, and it's not just gonna be Micah against Evan Neal. And I do think Micah matches up pretty well against Evan Neal because he's struggled, and Neal's kind of a bigger guy who struggles with speed so far, and that's Micah's game. So obviously Micah matches up well with Evan Neal at right tackle, but the way they deploy Micah, they're going to work him on those interior alignment as well. And I really think he has a chance to take over this game. And it's not even just Micah; like the rest of the defensive front has been really, really good. Odigizua has been really good. Bohanna has been really good. Dante Fowler was a monster on Sunday, and I think that's the beauty of having a guy like Parsons is he's a force multiplier who makes everybody else on your defense better. And so, I think we're going to get our first Demarcus Lawrence action on Sunday. So this defensive line has a chance to really take over this game. Are going to be key as well. Like I was mentioning earlier, the way they deploy Micah, Barr, LVE back this game.
I lost you there for a second, so I missed the last thing you said.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi is bugging. I was just saying that the linebackers are going to be really important. The way they deploy LVE, the way they deploy Barr. Micah's positional flexibility gives them the ability to provide attack matchups that they want. And I think with this Giants offensive line, they're going to be able to exploit some things. And we haven't even talked about the secondary and the Giants' lack of weapons on the outside. So. It's all going to be about containing Saquon Barkley because there isn't much else on this offense that scares you.
Yeah, I think we touched on everything as far as the offensive line versus kind of the defensive line and linebackers. And I definitely want to talk about the lack of weapons that the Giants have out there at the skill positions. Like we mentioned, Saquon and Sterling Shepard is still there. He had a big play in week 1. But I think their most consistent receiver through 2 games has been Richie James Jr. In his first season as a Giant. I believe he came over from San Francisco. He's made a couple of big plays through these first couple of weeks. Kenny Golladay is a guy who was relevant, a couple of years ago and in Detroit. But ever since he's went to the Giants, it's been nothing but turmoil there. And he's a guy that had 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And since the Giants, since he went to the Giants, he can't even really get on the field. I saw a quote from yesterday saying that he feels like he should be playing regardless. However, the coaches don't feel that way right now. Yeah, no, I was just going to say the coaches don't feel that way right now. He's frustrated, and I think there's definitely some things going on there. Kadarius Toney is another guy that, last year he came to Dallas and lit us up for 10 catches, 189 yards or something crazy like that. So he's a young, talented player, but he can't seem to get out of the doghouse. So those are some of just the weapons we're talking about on the outside, and there's not a whole lot scares you in terms of the Cowboys secondary matching up with this group, especially when you consider the performance that they just had against a way better, a more talented group in the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their weapon. They just don't have much on the outside. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Saquon Barkley because Brian Dable is one of the better offensive coaches out there, and he seemed, their investment that they've made up front seems to be paying off. It seems to be paying dividends as Barkley's been one of the most explosive players in the NFL through the first couple weeks, and Barkley just he is who he is. He's a terrific running back, and he's kind of their whole offense because Daniel Jones isn't attacking anybody downfield. They don't have any outside weapons really. Kenny Galladay can't get out of the doghouse. I mean, for whatever reason. That contract's a bust. Like you mentioned, Tony. It's all Saquon Barkley, and so that's going to be on the linebackers. It's going to be on the defensive front. If they're able to contain Barkley and get after Daniel Jones, I don't see how the Giants are able to even move the ball. Just because Barkley's their whole offense, and it's been really good so far. But a running back can only take you so far, and I'm glad Barkley's back and healthy because he's really fun to watch. Maybe not as much this week against the Cowboys, but I'm really excited to see what the Dallas defensive front can do because Saquon Barkley's a hell of a challenge, and they've had some trouble with him in the past. Not enough to where they would lose, but Barkley's given them some trouble before, so I'm excited to see how they go about containing Saquon Barkley. What do you think they're gonna? How do you think Dan Quinn's gonna game plan for Barkley?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Barkley is you just have to contain his big plays. He's a guy that can break off an 80-yard run. He had I believe, like a 58-yarder in Week 1 against Tennessee, and the rest of the game, he was relatively quiet. But he's a guy that if he gets out to the outside, he gets behind your defense, he will be gone on you. So I think that's the biggest thing, just containing him, but also just make him play in a crowd. You just make him, see a bunch of bodies, rally to the football, all things that the Cowboys defense under Dan Quinn have been, praised for. I think you just continue that with Barkley and just, like I said, just make sure he doesn't get outside, make sure you're staying in your gaps and, being disciplined in those gaps to make sure he doesn't break out.
Yeah, and one of the key things, like especially in the Tampa Bay game, was Tampa Bay ran a lot to the left at the left side of the Cowboys defense. Some of that was attacking Diggs, but a lot of it was attacking Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler. The non-Micah D-Law defensive ends. So I'm sure the Giants aren't stupid; that they're aware of that, and so it'll be interesting to see, if they do try and attack that left side, and they do run at Diggs, and they do run at Dorrance, because on the left side, Andrew Thomas has been one of the best tackles in football so far, and so maybe they run behind him. We'll have to see, but yeah, Saquon's going to keep him busy. I think guys like Izzy Mukwamu, who stepped in for Jaron Curse, and Donovan Wilson are going to be key as well because they play a lot in the box. They're going to be a part of the run support against Barkley. But yeah, I really think Dallas has the horses up front to, they aren't as great against the run as they are rushing the passer. But I do think this Dallas defensive front will be able to wreck, the Giants' game plan, because I don't know how that, everybody aside from Andrew Thomas is going to be able to block Parsons, D-Law, Odigizua, Bohanna, Gallimore, Tristan Hill. Like, they're deep up front. And I think the Dallas defensive front is a lot better than Carolina's, and they really struggled with Carolina's defensive front. And again, a running back can only take you so far. As good as Saquon is, it's going to be about limiting those big plays. But Saquon's also, a pretty good pass catcher as well. Like, he's the whole package. So he's the focal point of this game plan, and I hope they're ready up front.
Yeah, tackling in space is going to be a big factor as well. When you talk about him catching the ball out in the flats and different, I mean, he runs a pass pattern, I think, at one of the highest percentages for a running back in the league. So Dayball is definitely trying to take advantage of that strength for Barkley. So I think tackling in space, much like last week, is going to be important to make sure you get him on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be key. That's going to be key if they want to come away from MetLife with a big win. Yeah, so that's bird's eye view of how they match up on that side of the ball. Let's look at the Giants defense against the Dallas offense. The Giants, they definitely have some guys up front. They have guys like Leonard Williams. They have Azeez Ojulari. They have some guys that scare you for sure. Dexter Lawrence, how could I forget him? He's big dancing bear. I mean, I would have killed for him to be on the Cowboys. But this Giants defense has been really good so far. But their first two games are against Ryan Tannehill and God, I'm blanking. Baker Mayfield on Carolina now, and they're getting a little bit more of a break this week with avoiding Dak, and they get Cooper Rush. Where do you think Dallas is going to be able to attack the Giants defense?
So this one is something that I've kind of struggled with when looking at this game, because I think the Giants' weakness on defense is in their secondary. But when I look at the Cowboys roster, I don't see a whole lot of guys that are going to be able to take advantage of that. Now, of course, Michael Gallup is expected to be back on Monday night, but he's not going to get his full complement of plays. So I think they're going to kind of use him in different situations, kind of be a situational player on Monday. But they definitely have a weakness in that secondary. So I'm looking for CeeDee Lamb to kind of take the reins of that. I think the Dalton Schultz injury status is going to be very important to, because he could be able to take advantage of some matchups out there as well. And then, like I said, Michael Gallup in spots, if he can win his matchup in those spots, that would be crucial. But just making sure the Cowboys stay on schedule, stay ahead of the chains. You don't want a whole bunch of penalties, dealing with Rush. Rush is going to get the ball out, I think, quick and efficiently. But you just have to be able to win on the outside to give them those options to take advantage of in that secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that secondary is not great. And again, their strength is up front. I believe I was just looking at the Giants injury report, and I believe Ojulari and top 5 pick, maybe Thibodeau went 7th, I forget. Kayvon Thibodeau are questionable. Let me double check.
Yes. They're questionable. And I saw a report saying that they are probably trending in the wrong direction.
Trending in the wrong direction. Okay. So, the Giants are banged up front. They're banged up. So, even their strength of their team is banged up. And I believe, I did miss this, but it looks like Leonard Williams is on the injury report. He has an MCL issue that the same injury that Kayvon Thibodeau suffered in the preseason. So, Giants defense is banged up, and Dallas's offense with last week with Cooper Rush against the Bengals was able to create some plays early, create some plays downfield. With their scripted plays early on, especially. So they're going to need a hot start for sure, and I think they're going to have some confidence. And the shot in the arm that is Michael Gallup. Again, I don't think Gallup's going. No one's saying Gallup's going to have his full workload this week, because I just don't think that's in the cards. I don't. I think the Cowboys are generally smart about working guys back from injuries. I complain about a lot of the things they do. That's one thing they're really good at, is they're able to work guys back. So this does seem like a game where Dallas's offense is going to have a chance to pounce early, kind of like they did against the Bengals. So, who's one player on offense that you think they're gonna be leaning on the most in this game?
I would say I'm going to throw out CeeDee Lamb. I think this could be a big opportunity for CeeDee Lamb. He's coming off a 7-catch, 75-yard performance and a huge bounce back game against Cincinnati. And I think he continues that momentum. I think he's going to be juiced up because Michael Gallup is back, even though it's going to be situationally. And I'm looking for CeeDee Lamb to make a big impact on Monday night.
Yeah, their secondary is not very good, and I agree. I agree that this seems like this could be a big CeeDee Lamb game, and yeah, I'm looking at the Giants injury report right now. Finally found it. My phone took forever to load up, but Leonard Williams was a DNP today, and a DNP on Thursday usually means you probably ain't playing. So Dalton Schultz was also a DNP, so well, there seemed to be some hope that Schultz could play, and he avoided a major injury. But I'm personally
I've
fine
heard
letting.
that it's a one game at max. So if he misses this game, he's expected to be back against Washington, but they're not going to rule him out for Monday.
And honestly, like, it's just one game. It's week 3. Like, I would rather have Dalton Schultz good to go the rest of the year and not risk anything serious. So I'm perfectly fine if Dalton Schultz doesn't want to play, or sorry, I worded that wrong. Doesn't want to play. He absolutely does want to play. If they let Dalton Schultz fully heal up, I want him right for the rest of the season. I'm not gonna run him out there with a knee injury against the Giants in week 3. So yeah, I mentioned some of those names earlier, and that's really big that Leonard Williams is out, because assuming that Jason Peters doesn't play left tackle and they move Tyler Smith inside, that's big for Matt Farniok, because Farniok has struggled. He's had some beasts he's had to deal with inside. He's had Vita Vea, he's had DJ Reader. I mean, no Leonard Williams is a big deal. They'll still have their hands full with Dexter Lawrence, but I think Dallas is going to be able to have some success up front, because this Giants defense, frankly, isn't that good. And again, Thibodeau was limited today, as well as Aziz Ojolari. So there's a chance they could play, but again, Leonard Williams being out is a really big deal. He is terrific. So um, we've been talking about CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup being back, maybe Noah Brown steps up again. I think especially without Leonard Williams, the way this Dallas O line has been run blocking, this could be a big Zeke Pollard type game, and a lot of between the tackles type stuff where Dallas is able to blow them off the ball and control the line of scrimmage. Because again, as big of a concern as the offensive line was, early on in the preseason and just kind of throughout, this Dallas O line is shaping up to be all right, and especially in the run. And having Jason Peters at left tackle, maybe in the future with Smith at guard, I mean, that would be a really good run blocking line with Peters, Smith, Biotish, Martin, and Steele. But a little ahead of myself there. It's Farniok for this week, I believe. So either way, I do think Dallas matches up pretty well with them on both sides of the ball. Giants are 2-0, but they're kind of the same Giants as last year, maybe with a healthier Barkley and a better offensive line. But defensively, I'm still not that concerned about them, especially without Leonard Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that is fair. Like I said, I think the biggest thing for this one is, you're playing on Monday night. It's primetime game. The New York Giants fans are going to be rowdy. I saw some quotes from Carolina where they said that they had to go to actually a silent count on Sunday afternoon because the Giants crowd was so loud. So I think we're going to get a pumped up team. I think they're, like you touched on earlier, they're really excited about their 2-0 start. They haven't had much to cheer about since 2016. So I think this is going to be a big opportunity. And I think some of those players that have been around there for a couple of years, like a Saquon, I think they are going to take this matchup personally. It's Giants Cowboys, and it's going to be an exciting matchup. I do think the Cowboys have a lot of things that they can take advantage of in this matchup. But again, anytime you're playing with a backup quarterback, some of that stuff is kind of up in the air at times.
So you talked all about how the Cowboys match up well with them. What's an area where you think the Cowboys might struggle on Sunday? I personally think it's going to be that they're going to look at what the Buccaneers did running to the left with Saquon Barkley. That issue was better in week 2 with Joe Mixon, but the Bengals also had to abandon the run a little bit because they were down 2 scores most of the game. In a tight game, what do you think they're gonna? What's a way that? Because not my cup over. I think that I think that's where they're going to be able to attack Dallas a little bit, is use Saquon Barkley and do their thing and attack that left side like Tampa Bay did. Is there another place where you think Dallas might struggle with them?
So it's not necessarily an area. I just think, if they get behind the chains a little bit with penalties, you maybe turn the ball over a couple of different times, those penalties and turnovers is where the Cowboys can get themselves in trouble, especially playing on the road. Those things are always magnified on the road. You've played 2 home games thus far, and I think playing on the road for the first time in a prime time situation, penalties and turnovers is where I think the Cowboys could struggle in this situation. And if they were to lose this game, I think it would be those 2 areas that would cost them.
Yeah, absolutely, especially on the road and with a backup quarterback. Rush was solid last week against Cincinnati, but he got away with some throws that probably should have been picked off. So, again, the Giants' secondary isn't as good as Cincinnati's, but still, I think that Cooper Rush got away with a couple throws that you can't consistently get away with. So, yeah. And the other thing is staying ahead of the sticks. Just being able to get in those second and third and manageables so you don't have to attack downfield. Oh, we lost Corey. Let me send him an invite here. But yeah, just while we get Corey back in, Dallas is going to be able to. I think Dallas is going to be able to attack those guys downfield with Cooper Rush early on, and there we go. Corey's back in.
Yeah, I don't know
I think
what that was.
Yeah, we're having all sorts of technical difficulties this show. But I do think Dallas is going to be able to going to have to keep Cooper Rush in stride and in rhythm, because you get behind those sticks, you get third and long, that's where problems are going to happen. And you see those forced throws downfield. So they need to stay ahead of the sticks. They need to limit the penalties because, like you said, all of that shit's magnified on the road, especially in a big divisional game against an opponent in prime time. So, one thing I will say about Mike McCarthy before we get into our predictions and wrap this up is, it's kind of always been his thing. He's really good at getting teams up with a backup quarterback and getting them right and prepared. We saw that last year with Minnesota. We saw it last week with the Vikings, and we saw it multiple times when Aaron Rodgers was out and injured in Green Bay. Remember the Matt Flynn. I mean, they made Matt Flynn a hell of a lot of money. So, we've definitely seen Mike McCarthy in the past have success with backup quarterbacks, and I think that they have a chance to go to 3-0 with Cooper Rush, because I do think this is a very, very winnable game. And again, like I said earlier, if you win this game, anything you get after this with Cooper Rush is gravy, because you and I have said several times, just scratch out 2, maybe 3 games with Cooper Rush. This would put you at 2, and you're not even Dak isn't even close to being back. At least I don't think so. This win would do all sorts of things for Dallas's momentum heading into the rest of the season. What are your thoughts on how McCarthy's gotten them prepared with the backup quarterback? Because they seem to have a different edge on Sunday against the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one area where Mike McCarthy can be praised. I think there's a lot of faults that come with Mike McCarthy, but his ability to kind of get his team ready, I mean, you have to give him credit for that. For them to go out and beat this Bengals team this past Sunday in a game where not many people expected the Cowboys to win, and for the type of football that the Cowboys actually played on Sunday offensively. After the reports earlier in the week saying that he was getting more involved with Kellen Moore as far as the play calling and everything like that. Yeah, you have to give Mike McCarthy a lot of credit for that. And I think he in a weird way enjoys these type of situations as well. I think he takes pride in that as a coach, and I feel like he can kind of use these moments to kind of gather the guys, gather his team. And I know he preaches, it seems like every time before the season starts, that, hey, this year we won the Super Bowl, we had to use, 90 guys or whatever. I don't even know the exact number, but he always has that speech for the team ready and prepared, in training camp, where, we're not just relying on one guy. It's not just a one guy team. One guy can't make or break the season, and we're going to go out here and compete every single week. And yeah, Mike McCarthy deserves a lot of credit for that.
You think he's gonna go out there and smash a watermelon in front of the team like he apparently did with with the Vikings a couple years ago? Maybe smash a watermelon and get the fellas fired up before the game.
Yeah, I know he was really upset that got out in the media.
Yeah, he has his tactics for sure. Well, let's wrap this up and get to predictions. I'll let you go first, Corey. Give me a score and then just a general thought on how this game's going to go.
Yeah, for the first time this year, I am going to pick the Cowboys to win this football
Wow.
game. Yeah, so I'm not always negative. I think they win somewhat of a low scoring game. I think they win somewhere in the range of like 20-10, somewhere in that range. I don't think the Giants will score a whole lot on this defense. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is that it's going to be somewhat of a back and forth battle. But the Cowboys defense will create a takeaway on Daniel Jones via interception. I think Trayvon Diggs might get his first interception this week. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor on a Cowboys win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to be able to really get after Daniel Jones. I think they're really going to be able to limit him and just attack him because this Giants pass protection is not very good. And I really think they're going to be able to wreak some havoc in there. I do agree. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. I'm going to go. I'm going to go 24. I'm going to go 24-13 Dallas. The spread on this game is about even. I believe the Giants are favored by 1. It actually opened at 3. So bettors think that the Cowboys without without Dak Prescott are just as good as the Giants, which is, says all you need to know about the Giants and what Vegas thinks of the Giants. And, maybe hearing that will tamper some Giants fans' expectations down a little bit. But I do think the Dallas defense is going to put together another really strong performance. And I think the biggest mismatch of the game is the Dallas defensive front against this Giants offensive line. And I think this could be another big Micah Parsons game on a big stage where the Micah Parsons Defensive Player of the Year noise gets louder and louder, and we're only in week 3. So I'm really excited for Monday, and I'm going to go 24-13. What do we have you at, Corey? 20-10?
20-10, yep.
I think 24 points might be a little too much, but the Giants defense is pretty banged up, and I think Dallas is going to have a chance to really move the ball against a banged up defense that wasn't very good to begin with. So before we get out of here, just want to let everyone know, make sure to follow our Dallas Cowboys Twitter account at Cowboys News 365. Follow our main account at Dallas_Fanatic. Follow us on Instagram at DAL Cowboys Fanatic. Check out me on Twitter at Nate_Sant77 and Corey at the Mr. Douglas. And make sure to check out all of our stuff going on at the DallasSportsFanatic.com. I believe it's just DallasSportsFanatic.com. We're posting constant content with our articles and stuff. My Bengals defensive review and probably my offensive review is going to come up. Should be later today. So again, make sure to check out everything. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you're listening to the podcast right now on Spotify. Head on over to our YouTube channel, throw us a subscribe, hit that subscribe button, helps us out a lot. So again, thank you guys for listening, and hopefully next time we talk, it's another victory. I guess it wouldn't be Victory Monday; it'll be a Victory Tuesday podcast. So we will talk to you next time on the Silver and Blue Podcast.